Hello and welcome back. I've taken a little break before starting recording this video, and I hope you're doing too at some point when it feels right to you to take some time out. So I feel don't do lex. We're at the lex part right now that stands for learn and express. And what I want to say here is that it's optional. The most important practice is for you to feel that and don't do anything. And as we said before, don't do also does not mean to try not to do. Feel doesn't mean to try to push to attain something. It's just being open and let it arise. With that being said, all the learning and all the expression of your feelings and of your emotions, this is optional. This is not part of what you're meant to do. This is not the most important thing. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. So what can you learn? I call them the 4 W's, and these are wants, wounds, wars, and being well aligned. Now, you know, them all starting with W is kind of a nice thing, so let me explain what is behind the words, what's the meaning behind the words, what do we mean by those. An emotion can tell us something about our wants, you know, what do we want? And most of the time when we kind of get there or get closer to that, or we experience some emotion that we seek, something that we want, we feel kind of good. We feel generally a pleasant feeling and a good emotion, something that we call a good, a positive emotion. Or it's about wounds. Wounds can mean that we feel kind of put down and, you know, all the negative and tense emotions that are related to contraction within. These tell you something about your wounds. And just as a little disclaimer here, in the next videos I will be going through examples in my own life so you can really see how I am applying this formula in my own life and how you can learn from that as well. Because I believe generic examples in the sense of kind of made up, kind of thoughtful examples are not the real thing. The real thing are like real examples, so you can kind of understand not only like the framework of this formula, but also how to apply that really in your personal life and see how I have applied that and the nuances, you know, of living that. This is where the value is, and we'll be covering that. So this being said, the other 2 W's are wars and well aligned. You know, well, the first ones, wants and wounds, are more related to like spikes of emotions. Wars and well aligned could be called more related to kind of moods. You know, when you are more well aligned in your life, you tend to feel at ease. You tend to feel kind of like you're floating above the ground, so to speak. Everything kind of works out and you are generally more at ease, okay with yourself and peaceful. And wars, it's like inner conflict when your life doesn't work out, you know, when you haven't figured out this process and how to relate to your inner world, thoughts and emotions. When you haven't really learned that, it's all, or many times, like wars, you know, you're kind of torn apart in between. Shall I do that? You know, what the heart says, what I want to do, and then what the head says, what I ought to do. This is where the wars are coming in. And those emotions, those kind of moods, like the general, I was talking about the default state before. It's very, very important to say that most people's default state is actually this kind of tense and stiff and anxious feeling, but this is not the default state at all. What they don't realize is they are pulled into this state so often and so frequently that they haven't even tasted the default state of like peace and contentment at all. So yes, those moods, they tend to be the default state for many people, but it's not like the natural default state. It's just because they're so often triggered into those states. And why, you know, the reason why it's also important to learn from your emotions is because it makes them valid and it gives you a reason. You know, before it's just something that kind of overcomes you. But once you see like the triggers of those emotions, you learn from them what they mean to you, what they can mean. And as I said, you know, we go through that, you know, kind of an exercise, a practice in the next videos, but to see where they are coming from, what they can tell you about yourself, your conditioning, which is not yourself, but the conditioning that happens within you. It gives a reason, and it also makes the I, you know, the importance and the validity of the emotion much more tangible, because we actually see, okay, they are there for a reason. So by learning that, you actually enforce this practice because you take something valuable out of your life before it's just something unvaluable or not valuable that stands in the way. You see the shift of emotion that can occur there. So this is why we want to learn from that. And then X, you know, lex for expression. Expression of emotions is also optional. You express it to yourself, for example, talking it out. You know, I often do that when I just, you know, lay on my bed and just do some thinking, some kind of strategic thinking about life, my own life, and how do I want to make decisions. I want to talk them out. Yeah, I feel about that. And you know, some people think it's weird to talk to yourself, but you know, you have to follow your own heart. You know, who's there to judge you? I mean, who is there to judge you? When it feels right for you to kind of process your emotions, I find it very, very valuable to talk them out when you're with yourself. Or kind of moving, you know, expression of emotion can also be a movement. You know, to do some push-ups or to go for a run. You know, we've said this before. The difference here is which place are you coming from? Are you running away from your emotions? Or is the emotion really fell through and you just feel like, you know, a lot of energy and you want to, you know, channel this energy, so to speak, in a healthy way? You know, which place are you coming from? So movement can also be an expression of emotion, and also making sounds. And this is also something that, you know, when you first start out with that, can sound a little weird, but, you know, to express your emotions in a kind of you know, when you feel kind of tense and strainful, then you really tune in and feel. And we will be going in module 5 on the body, more into like contraction and everything. And you feel, my throat or my chest is, you know, what sound would express the feeling that you have best? And with that, you can really go deeper into the feelings and make them rise above the threshold, so you can really witness them. So making sounds can be a good idea, but also not to run away from the emotion. You see, when you're making sounds in order to not wanting to feel the emotion, that's not the thing. The sound should take you deeper into the emotion instead of out of the emotion, and kind of focusing on the sound you're making instead of the emotion. That's not the way, you know, that's also running away. Expression can also mean talking it out to others, you know, with a friend, with a family member, talking about your emotions. That's healing, because once you're able to speak it, it's not so dense anymore in your own psychological structure. Do you see that? Once you're able to talk about those things, they're not so heavy anymore. So this can be like a great help. And mostly the talking about the emotion comes really, like the relief really, and the healing comes really from the act of you talking instead of the other person giving you advice. Because advice on how to handle emotions is actually quite futile. The only good advice is actually for you to make it a priority to figure out a way how you can handle your own emotions, with like some little guidelines that you can apply for yourself, what we've been giving you here in this course. Or acting upon it. But here's also one thing. Acting out an emotion is the same like making sounds. You know, you want to make sure it doesn't come from a place of me wanting to rid myself of this emotion, and for this reason I act upon it. But also sometimes an emotion requires some action after that, but we need to make sure we feel it through fully. So this is the entire formula, you know, the importance, we feel, you know, we don't do anything with it, and then optionally we can learn from that and express from that. And why it's optional is also, like the reason why it's optional is also because it takes time at the beginning, you know, to really get through that and to kind of wire your thinking in a way that you learn actually from your emotions, and you don't see it as a kind of something that happens to you, but rather something to learn from that tells you something about something important in your life, is a practice. So it's optional. Don't take it too hard. Don't kind of cling to, I need to find a meaning for this emotion, and if I don't, I messed up. No, don't try to force, you know, to find a meaning, and don't try to force expression. Oftentimes it's also better to really not express the emotion, to kind of let it arise, and kind of, it feels like it's burning up, you know, you really feel oftentimes, not only in a kind of energy rich emotions, like in an emotion which comes like anger or like jealousy or like elation, you know, that come with like a lot of energy. You also feel in like just subtleties of little small kind of, you know, nuances of emotions. When you really feel them and allow them, you feel like kind of a warm feeling around your heart, around in your chest, and oftentimes it doesn't really require being acted out, but really being in touch and tuning in. So that's the formula, and yes, see you in the next video.